A quiet morning at the school turned into something no one expected. Children rushed in, teachers prepared for the day, but at the front gates, one police K-9 refused to move. He blocked a trusted teacher, growling and locking eyes as though guarding against something unseen. Confusion spread, whispers turned into fear, and soon officers were circling the scene. Each clue only raised more questions. What was it that only the dog could sense? And when the truth finally came out, it left the entire staff stunned. What the officers uncovered that day is something you'll never forget. Here's the full story. But before we jump in, make sure to hit the like button. It motivates us to bring new stories every day. The morning began like any other at the quiet suburban school. Children hurried in through the main gates with backpacks bouncing against their shoulders. Parents waved their last goodbyes from the parking lot. Teachers walked briskly toward the entrance, coffee in hand, preparing for another busy day. Yet among the normal chatter, something unusual stirred just outside the front doors. A police K-9 unit had been stationed near the entrance for routine security patrols, something the school requested after a string of petty thefts in the neighborhood. Most days, the dog and his handler blended into the background, watchful but never disruptive. But today, the dog froze in place. His ears shot up, his muscles tightened, and his eyes locked on one teacher making her way toward the building. Without warning, the K-9 lunged forward, planting himself directly in her path. His handler tightened the leash, but the dog would not budge. His body was rigid, teeth slightly bared, tail stiff and unyielding. The woman, a longtime teacher at the school, stopped mid-step, startled. She looked confused, clutching a thick stack of papers in her arms. At first, everyone assumed it was a minor misunderstanding. Perhaps the dog was spooked, or maybe a sudden movement caught his attention. Yet the dog refused to move aside. His growl deepened, his front paws spread wide, blocking her completely from entering the school. Children slowed, whispering among themselves, while other staff members exchanged uncertain glances. The handler tugged at the leash, giving firm commands, but the dog did not obey. It was as if something invisible tethered him to that teacher, some warning buried deep in his instincts. Why would the K-9 target a teacher he had seen countless times before? The tension grew heavier with each second. The principal approached, attempting to calm the teacher, assuring her it was likely nothing. But the K-9's refusal unsettled everyone. His eyes remained fixed, unwavering, almost as though he sensed something no human could detect. The stack of papers in the teacher's arms trembled slightly. She insisted there was no reason for alarm, but the unease was impossible to ignore. The handler, sensing the dog's unusual behavior, asked if she could set the papers aside. Reluctantly, she placed them down on the bench nearby. Still, the K-9 did not back away. His nose lifted slightly, nostrils flaring as though catching a faint trace of something buried deep within. Whispers spread through the staff. Was the dog reacting to stress? To a hidden object? To something far more dangerous? The principal tried to brush off the growing panic, but the truth was harder to hide. This was no ordinary reaction. The handler made the decision to call for backup. Within minutes, additional officers arrived. They escorted the children further into the building, away from the unsettling scene. The staff gathered in clusters, their faces pale with concern. The teacher herself stood frozen, trying to maintain composure, though the weight of the stairs around her pressed heavy on her shoulders. She insisted she had nothing unusual, nothing to hide, but the K-9's unwavering suspicion told another story. The officers began to ask questions. Where had she been that morning? What exactly was in the bag slung across her shoulder? Why had the dog fixated on her, ignoring everyone else? Each answer she gave only seemed to invite more questions. Her routine sounded ordinary, too ordinary, some thought. She claimed she came straight from home, carrying only her work materials, but the dog's growls deepened each time she spoke. The handler decided to allow the K-9 to continue his inspection. The dog sniffed around her shoes, her bag, even circling the papers she had set aside. His agitation rose at specific points, yet nothing visibly explained it. Teachers exchanged worried glances. The staff whispered about recent news stories, dogs uncovering things no one could see, drugs hidden in school supplies, dangerous items smuggled into secure buildings, even long-forgotten evidence clinging to clothing fibers. Could something like that be happening here? The most troubling question remained. Why would a respected teacher, with years of service at the school, trigger such a response? Hours dragged on, and still the mystery deepened. The police expanded their search. They decided to secure the entire area, locking down the school temporarily until answers emerged. Parents waiting outside grew restless, wondering why their children were kept inside. The K-9 returned again and again to the teacher, his body language unchanged. Every sign pointed to one truth. Whatever he detected, it was connected to her, and yet no one could see it. Officers examined the papers she had brought. Lesson plans, worksheets, nothing unusual on the surface. They checked her bag, notebooks, pens, a lunch container, all normal. But the dog's persistence unsettled them. Could something be hidden deeper, something no one had thought to check yet? The staff began piecing together details. Some recalled how she had arrived later than usual that morning. Others remembered seeing her near the back parking lot instead of her usual entrance. Small inconsistencies surfaced, seemingly unimportant on their own but strange when tied together. And then came the strangest clue of all. When officers carefully examined her shoes, the K-9's reaction spiked. He barked sharply, pawing at the ground near her feet, refusing to move. The teacher insisted they were simply her old work shoes, worn daily. But the officers knew better. Dogs rarely fixate without reason. What was it about those shoes? Was it a trace of something carried in from outside? Was it a scent tied to an object she had unknowingly touched? Or was it something more sinister, hidden beneath the surface? The longer it went on, the more the staff questioned everything they thought they knew. The once calm morning had unraveled into a storm of uncertainty, and the K-9 remained the immovable center of it all. By midday, the school buzzed with tension. Every corner seemed to hold a question, every whisper a possibility. No one could focus on lessons or paperwork. All eyes remained on the strange standoff at the front entrance, the teacher standing in place, the K-9 guarding against her as though protecting the entire school. The staff wanted answers. The parents demanded reassurance. The officers pressed on. And yet the truth, whatever it was, remained locked in shadows. What exactly had the K-9 sensed? Why was he so determined to stop her from stepping inside? And what could possibly be uncovered that would shake the entire staff? The day that had begun in routine was now teetering on the edge of revelation, but the final piece of the puzzle had yet to surface. The dog had drawn the line. Something was there. The question was not whether, but when it would finally be revealed. The air around the school grew tense as hours passed. The K-9 remained fixed, his body rigid, his eyes locked on the teacher as though guarding against an unseen threat. Parents were told only that security checks were being conducted, but whispers began spreading through the community. Why would a trusted teacher be held at the entrance, unable to step inside, while a dog refused to release his guard? The officers decided to widen their search beyond the teacher's belongings. They scanned the entire entryway, the hall lockers, even nearby bushes. Yet every sweep brought them back to the same place, the K-9 circling her, his nose low, his growls steady. The breakthrough came not from what she carried, but from what she had unknowingly touched. One officer noticed faint traces of dark smudges on the soles of her shoes. At first, it looked like dirt from the school's outer lot. But when tested, it revealed something far stranger, a trace chemical used in local construction storage, not something a teacher should have stepped in. The dog's nose had picked up that faint chemical trail, clinging stubbornly to her shoes, leading everyone to ask the same pressing question: where had she been that morning? The teacher hesitated, fumbling for an explanation. She admitted she had taken a shortcut through the back alley near the old maintenance shed, claiming she had simply been running late. But that alley had been fenced off for years, with warning signs posted about unsafe conditions. No one had any reason to walk there. The officers requested access to the shed. The K-9 pulled hard on the leash, dragging his handler forward, his instincts flaring with urgency. Staff and officers followed in a heavy silence, the teacher trailing reluctantly behind. When they reached the abandoned shed, the truth began to unravel. The padlock that was supposed to seal it was broken. The door hung slightly ajar, showing signs of recent tampering. The K-9 lunged forward, sniffing violently at the threshold before pressing inside. His barks echoed through the hollow space, sharp and commanding, demanding attention. Inside, under a pile of old tarps and forgotten equipment, lay a tightly wrapped duffel bag. The officers froze, the handler gave the signal, and the K-9 barked furiously at the bag, pawing at the floor. The air grew heavier as officers carefully unzipped it. What they found was beyond anything the staff had imagined. Bundles of electronics, wires, and suspicious materials were crammed inside. Equipment that clearly did not belong on school grounds. Alongside it lay stacks of identification cards, some real, some forged, along with documents that hinted at an organized plan. Whoever had planted the bag had meant for it to remain hidden, tucked away in the forgotten shed until the time was right. The question now was chilling. Why had the teacher been the one blocked by the K-9? The answer came when officers pieced together the faint traces of the chemical on her shoes and the path she admitted to taking. Without realizing it, she had stepped exactly where the hidden bag had been moved in and out. The K-9 had locked onto her not out of suspicion of guilt, but because she carried the trace evidence of a much larger threat. The entire staff, once suspicious of their colleague, now realized the truth. The dog had not been guarding against her. He had been guarding through her, using her shoes as the link to lead everyone back to the hidden danger. Relief washed over the teacher, though the weight of the misunderstanding had shaken her deeply. The officers reassured her she was not under suspicion, but rather had become the key connection in uncovering the truth. The discovery shocked the staff, but it also brought clarity. The shed had become a drop point, likely for someone outside the school who intended to smuggle dangerous items inside without detection. The dog's instincts had prevented disaster, stopping the danger before it could cross the threshold of the building where hundreds of children were present. The investigation continued for weeks, tracing back the source of the materials, uncovering who had planted them and why. But one fact remained certain. Without the K-9's refusal to move, without his unshakable instincts, the hidden threat would have slipped by unnoticed. In the days that followed, the school returned to routine, though the memory of that tense morning never faded. The teacher who had been stopped received apologies from staff and parents alike, everyone acknowledging the fear she endured while standing at the center of suspicion. She carried herself with grace, grateful that the truth had been revealed before harm could be done. The K-9, however, became the heart of the story. His instincts had not only protected the children and staff, but had drawn invisible threads together, connecting scattered clues until the larger picture was exposed. The principal spoke of the day when fear and confusion gripped the school, when questions seemed endless and suspicion clouded the air. He reminded everyone how the K-9 had held the line, refusing to let danger pass through the school doors, even when no one else could see it. And then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. In front of the cheering crowd, the K-9 was called forward. A gleaming medal was fastened to his harness, honoring his bravery, his persistence, and his unshakable bond to the duty of protection. The audience rose to their feet in applause, children clapping with joy, parents smiling through tears. The once tense memory was now sealed with pride, the mystery solved, and the danger turned away. The teacher, who had stood in the center of it all, smiled too, grateful not only for her name being cleared, but for the courage of the animal who had turned suspicion into salvation. And so the story ended where it began, at the school gates, with one truth carved forever into memory. When instincts speak, they are never wrong. The police K-9 had not only saved the day, he had earned his Medal of Honor. If one brave K-9 could uncover this hidden danger, imagine the stories you might miss if you don't stick around. Don't be the one hearing it second. Hit like, tap subscribe, and stay with us, because the next story may be the one that leaves you speechless.